Okay, we've made it home. I'm in the van. I'm coming around to our big garage and pull it in and get her done. As you guys can see, we've got an engine light on, and there's just two codes and they both refer to the EGR valve. So I'm hoping this is going to restore that. Hopefully we don't get any more codes involving the emission system, because like I said, I changed the fuel pump in this vehicle and I had a little problem with the vent tube. The nipple broke off and I had to repair it, and for some reason you can't pump the gas very fast into the tank anymore, but it is breathing. Everything is hooked up, the emission cables are hooked up, so they shouldn't be able to get us for that, you know, if there was a inspection for it. But if anything was wrong, it should come up with a code, the engine light coming on. It's all there, and it just kind of sucks. I think either the plunger in the filler neck might have a obstruction, or it's just not getting enough air when we're filling it up. But everything is hooked up. Everything's hooked up to the emission stuff, so everything should be up to code. But anyway, today's project involves the EGR valve, so I'm going to go ahead and get the garage door open, get this pulled inside, and we're going to get her done. Don't you just love it when you record stuff and it's not recording? I recorded pulling the van in, but whoop-de-doo about that. I guess that's nothing. Here's our EGR valve down here. Go ahead and take a quick look-see. We've got our two 8mm bolts up here on the head. They have to come loose. And then they may be 8mm bolts there too. That takes the tube off. And then there should be two 10mm bolts that hold the EGR valve on. So I'm going to set up my GoPro, and hopefully all that footage looks good. If not, you probably won't see it, but at least you guys can see what I'm doing here. Just taking these two off to disconnect this hose that goes up to here on the engine head, and then there's the two there. Once that's loose, it'll be out of the way, and then we'll unhook this electrical connector. I'm also going to unhook the negative terminal on the battery. I don't think it's a necessity, since, you know, this is not a fuel related thing. When I worked on the fuel tank, I unhooked the battery so there was no electronics running to anything, because that's kind of a safety deal. But I'm going to do it anyway. It's just a practice. So I'm going to get my GoPro set up, and hopefully you guys can see the whole thing going on. I'll probably do a commentary over the top of that. Okay, like I said, I'm going to be doing some commentary after I do all this in editing. But I've got me what happens to be 10mm. I'm going to disconnect the negative terminal here on the battery. Let's go the correct direction. We don't want to tighten it. Had it off already several times when we worked on the fuel pump. So we'll get this taken off. Comes off nice and easy. Like I said, I've had it off a bunch. Move it off to the side so it's not making contact with the side post or the top post. Looks like our side post is covered anyway. So I will have to go get my tools. I think first I'm going to see about this electric connector. There's a red tab on it. So pull it back. And if this all comes out good, I may not do any commentary over the top. I may just leave it the way it is. So that's loose. So now you got to pinch down on the connector and pull back on it. And sometimes they can be boogers to get out. My tab slipped back in, push it back out. All right, come on down. There we go. It's loose. That's out of the way. So now I need to get my, I believe, 8mm wrench. I think I'd be better off just using my wrenches. I don't know. I might be able to get my socket on the top one. We're just going to let this play. This is probably going to be a long video. I thought about shutting it off here, but there's always the wonders of editing. So let's use my 3/8 drive set. Definitely not using the big boys. Let's find my standards. I've got my 8mm here. Go ahead and grab my extension. I believe we will use this extension. So let's go ahead and hook them up, and I can get onto it. There we go. Okay, so let's turn those counterclockwise to loosen them up. Let's go ahead and take her right on out. Don't have my hat on my head. I've got this camera on my head, so I usually put my bolts in a hat. I don't want to lose these. I'll just sit them right over here next to this knife. Luckily, this is kind of a small project. There's not much going on here. It might be a little tricky once we get down to the EGR valve, because they said the alternator kind of sits in the way, but there's a way you can kind of finagle a wrench in there. Is the reason I brought my wrenches with me. My dad has tons of tools in this garage, but I bring my own tools because he's kind of disorganized at the moment, has been for the past 5 years. So, all right, I'm going to take my extension off, because I might need the wrench now, but I'm going to try it without the extension, and looks to me like I can get on that. Yep. Always nice when you can just use your sockets. Much faster. But there's a possibility the one on the right, I'm going to have to use a wrench. So let me get this one out. Pretty sure these are the same, but I might set these separate from the other bolts. They're kind of rusty. I definitely say this is factory. Never been changed to being a 2007. These bolts look a little different. They're finer thread, so the finer thread goes in the bottom one, so I want to remember that. And yeah, my socket will not fit in there. It might work with the extension, but I'm going to go ahead and get my wrench. I brought a 10 and an 8. I believe the ones that hold on the actual valve are 10s, so that's why I brought a 10. But I got my 8mm wrench here, and just like how I'm used to doing things, baby turns, baby turns. I sound like Bob Ross now. We're painting a beautiful cabin in the woods. Get this thing loose enough to where I can just turn it by hand. At least it is turning pretty easily, so that's a good thing. A lot of these bolts and stuff, you worry about busting them off because how long they've been in here and exposed to extreme heat off the engine. I'm starting to turn it with my fingers, but not quite well enough, so turned it a few more times with the wrench. And I think we're going to just keep using the wrench because it is being stubborn. I could probably have gotten my extension in behind there, but what's the point of that? So just baby steps. Takes a little more time, but you know what? You got all the time in the world. You got to live your life. You don't want to rush it. You don't want to run through it all. Just take your time. I sound like Bob Ross even more. My God, I'm not doing it on purpose. But anyway, here we go. Getting this sucker off here. And it's finally turning my fingers. Let's see, set my wrench down for just a sec. Once I get this bolt loose, I'd like to go ahead and grab the pipe. And she is almost free. Alright, any second now. I can feel it. There, it's loose. Now, let me go ahead and set this bolt down. So there may be a gasket there I want to grab. I don't want it falling down through there. And luckily, earlier in this vlog, I said there was no gasket with the part I bought from AutoZone. There is one, so I'm happy about that. Alright, everything up there looks nice, black and charcoal looking. I don't know if that's normal or not. It's all part of the emissions crap, but nice and dirty up there. There's our EGR valve. Let's see, I think that was, yep. Here's a little metal gasket. We will not reuse it if not necessary. So let's see now. There should be 2 bolts, and I'm going to feel with my fingers. I can feel the top one there. I feel if I can get the top one out, I saw a tip on the internet, you can push it back a little bit hopefully, and then get to the bottom one a little bit easier. So I think we're going to try that trick. Okay everybody, as you can see, I've got the valve pushed up. Once I got that top bolt out, it took quite a bit of force, so be very careful. But I just forced it forward because that's the direction you need to go with the bolt anyway. And it'll actually loosen the bolt some, but more importantly, get it up there far enough that you can now get your wrench slid in around there. And I would say the other way, and the only other way to take it out, the proper way, would be to loosen your alternator up and move the alternator. But big thing about that is you gotta loosen up your serpentine belt And I hate that about these new vehicles on these little V6s and these vans. The belts are on the right hand side instead of out front here where you can work on them. I think the proper way of taking those out is the tensioner pulley. I can't see it from up here, but I believe from underneath you have to have a special tool, and you use said special tool from underneath to pull back on that pulley to loosen the belt, to take the belt off, and then be able to take the alternator off. I did take this 15mm bolt out of the alternator, hoping I could just move the alternator down just a little bit, but I would say there's another bolt down below that I can't see because the alternator wouldn't budge, and that's probably for the best, because if I move it, it's going to be really hard to get it back up in position without taking the belt clear off. I really don't want to do that. But like I said, I've got this EGR valve pushed back far enough. You know, I couldn't get my wrench on it, and there went a socket ratchet or whatever. But anyway, I couldn't get my wrench on it, so I just took both hands, put it around this, and just pushed it back towards the front of the, or you know, the window of the car, because that's the direction the bolt needs to go. And that gives you enough room to get your wrench on there. And you just have to kind of finagle with it a little bit here. Just keep loosening it. And the idea is you should get it loose enough to where you can get it out with your fingers. But that's always fun. Go to parts stores like, I need this bolt. So they're like, what bolt? They make millions of them. So don't drop them. Just take your time. I can feel it. I think it's out now. I'm trying to be very cautious not to drop it. There, I pulled it out. It should be free. Let's pull it out. There we go. That is what we were wanting to get out, and I will get the new one out and we'll take a look at it. They look identical to me, folks. I think we're in good shape. The electrical connection's facing the same way, because you know, you get some of these aftermarket parts for these vehicles with the fuel pump anyway. Sometimes the orientation on the new fuel pump's a little different and you have to finagle the lines. But you know, good thing for this, everything's the way it needs to be. And as tight as stuff is underneath these engine bays, you need them to be. So it doesn't look like, if the gasket that came with this is still on the engine, I may need to make sure it's not there. This is the one that came with the new one, and I believe that's what would go on here. So I'm going to have to put that on, hold it on there, unless that's what's supposed to go on top of my pipe, which if I can find out what I did with the pipe. I don't think I left it up here on the engine. I moved it out of the way. No, it's right here. Okay. There's our pipe. Yeah, that's not for the pipe. So let me just check here real quick. Make sure the old one's right there. There it is. My bad. It slid down towards the alternator. Since we got a new one, we'll be replacing it. And I better get to it. Another thing to note on these gaskets, I wanted to look that up myself. These are just little metal gaskets that go on there. A lot of things need to have like a sealant put on there, kind of like a I don't know, silicone stuff. And I did a quick check on the internet to make sure that I didn't need to put a little bit around the hole of the gasket, and it says you do not. It says it's okay, you could put a little bit of glue or just a little bit of something on there just to kind of hold it on whenever you're trying to get it on there straight onto the engine. But I don't think I'll need to do that. I think it'll be all good. So guys, that's taking it apart. I'm going to put it back together. It's going to basically be the reverse process. And like I said, when I was taking it apart, the big thing was I couldn't get to the bottom bolt of that because the alternator's kind of in the way. And what I did, since pushing it in that direction is the direction the bolt needed to go to get it loose, I took a hold of the whole valve after I got the top one out and shoved it a little bit. It obviously turned the bolt with it, and then more importantly, it pushed it up far enough to where I could get a wrench down here on it. So I'm going to put it all back together. Really don't need to film that because it's just going to be the reverse process of what I did. Okay, everything's back together. Like I said, it's just the opposite of what I did, so I didn't record it. Battery's hooked up. My dad wants me to show off the old 72 over here one of these days, and we shall, but that'll be for another day. We're going to see, it should not have any engine lights, hopefully. And if we do, I can hook it up to the computer later. Engine running. All the other lights are on and shutting off, except the door jar and seatbelt light, of course. No engine light, so fingers crossed, hopefully that fixed it. Well, everybody on YouTube, we took it for a drive, about 30 minutes out to my place. No engine light, no more surging. I think it fixed it, so I'm going to probably upload this in 2 different sections. I'll upload this first as a kind of a how-to video, and then stay tuned. I'm going to probably go ahead and upload the full length of the day. I made kind of a vlog out of it, but we'll make it into a 2-part video, I think. So just stay tuned and make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you'd like. Thank you very much for watching.